Hey guys, what is up? Kid here as always, Shadowverse Evolve channel, bringing you another top 4 deck review. Duluth, Georgia just happened recently and they just released the stats and the top 4 decks. So we'll go ahead and go through them really quick and I'll break it down for you for anything. So first thing we'll look at, tournament deck distribution here. I think this is about where I believed it would kind of end up. I think obviously Havencraft, Kuon being still a very powerful deck. I think the deck that kind of keeps all the late game decks like in check, other than maybe Control Abyss when it does get the high rolls and stuff. Even then, I still think Havencraft is a bit, especially Kuon, is a bit better than Control Abyss. So we see like a lot of the other crafts coming down in play rate for the most part, roughly around 10% for everything else. And then the one lone Uma Musume player probably at that 3.17%. And then Idolmaster coming in pretty high here. It's like the newest set, obviously. Also, it has the best aggro deck that costs less than like $50 essentially. So no surprise there, the deck is being played a lot, not including the fact that Cute and Passion are both really fun decks that like are fun to pilot and have decently good chances of topping. But spoiler alerts, they did not top around this time. There are some IMAS cards showing up, but we'll just go ahead and get right into it. So first things first is first place here, Brian M's Runecraft list. I mean, there's not a lot to really talk about here. The only thing I think really worth talking about here is the fact that they decided to go basically with 4 copies of Snipe, with the Uma Musume Snipe along with the Angelic Snipe. We know this is going to be a somewhat more aggressive meta for the fact that Forest is still going around, cool aggro IMAS is still a thing. So having better early game interactions to kind of mitigate chances of you losing life, obviously very important. So having kind of like a 4th copy of Snipe probably feels pretty great. Another thing here, they opted for the double Penguin Wizard, and if we look down here in their Evo deck, they do play 2 copies of it, opting to cut 1 Demon Caller in the Evo deck. Personally, as always, I think I've told this before when I talk about Kuon, I like the 3 Demon Caller, 3 Curse Crafter split. I think that's a really powerful Evo lineup to have, and on obviously the 3 of Merwin here. Merlin. Once again, not the biggest fan of Penguin Wizard, but I guess like in some cases it could bait people into swinging into your Penguin Wizard instead of your face if they're on aggro, if they make that mistake. But outside of that, I'd rather, personally, I think Al there is fine in that spot and just go back to the 3 Demon Callers. I just think that's a much more powerful lineup for the Evos overall. But, you know, Penguin Wizard, not the worst in the world, and obviously has a good spot in this. Some people love it, others people don't. Personally, I don't, like I said. But the rest of the deck, super straightforward build. Surprising they still went for the triple Demon Caller because, you know, seeing your Demon Caller relatively early or on curve, especially going second, is really, really powerful to be able to create some kind of board presence that your opponent has to deal with. And if they don't, you get some chip damage in, which is always nice. But the fact that they, they went to the 3-2 split, meaning the Demon Caller sometimes, when you get that late into the deck, which happens quite often because obviously Kuon, the 3rd one not being able to Evo might come up occasionally, but maybe in this meta, it doesn't matter too much. Second place here is the Blue Ruse Havencraft deck. So first thing I gotta say here is this is super similar to the list I've been playing for quite a while now. Obviously, the one thing I want to point out is they opted to play Focus. In a lot of my testing over the time for so long, Focus in the beginning felt like the best thing ever, and then as the games went on and more testing happened, I soon realized Focus is like a pretty mid card overall and not that powerful. I think maybe in this meta it's completely fine because not only does it let you draw an extra card usually, but any healing in a really aggressive meta is going to feel really, really good for you. So Focus in this case, with the fact that the assumption here is that cool aggro is going to be a very big portion of the metagame, that the Focus might help alleviate some of that pressure that they put on early if you don't always draw the right answers. But the fact is still you play 3 Angelic Snipe, 3 the Saviors, which can answer a lot of stuff. And if they go wide, Boost Kicker on 4 is like totally fine, and so is Phantom Wield Blader on 2 or 3. All really good cards. There's a lot of removal here. Opting also for the Gravity Grappler card is insane. I'm sure after they play tested with it, especially with the package that Pressure and I initially put together, you can really feel the power of how strong Gravity Grappler is, especially when they don't answer it and you constantly get an award every turn in this aggressive meta and a draw. It must feel really, really powerful because you are opting to obviously leave up some play points. And we have two new additions here. Kaede here as the 1 of. I think that's perfectly fine. I think in my current list I run it as a 2 of. I just really like the card in general because it banishes something and is another ward they have to deal with. Really strong card, 4/5, especially when you miss the Marwyn on 4. But the other card they opted for is Themis Decree, which I think makes a lot of sense in the fact that if you miss the Marwyn, especially in the aggro matchups on curve to Evo and set up an 8/8 ward there that heals you 3 and draws your card, having Themis on 5 is not a bad answer along with your plays following it. On 6, you can do things like, especially with the Evo point, like Gravity Grappler and Karula, and then Evo it to get a pink for 2 and a draw card with another ward to kind of build a wide board that way when you go second, which feels pretty solid overall. But Themis here, I think obviously just to kind of clean up those really bad board states. And I guess in the Abyss matchup, if they constantly do copies of Kinsetsu, then at least Themis can answer basically everything all at once. And then you could still have like 5 play points or less left over to do something with that. Whether it being playing a Gravity Grappler out or even another Cruel or something like that, just to put more pressure on the board. But generally, in the Gensetsu matchup, I think having like 6 board wipes and stuff, it feels already powerful enough. But the extra assurance with Themis Decree is there. And then I guess if anyone's playing anything cheeky or you play into the mirror of Control Haven, having Themis Decree for their Marwyn, if they go turn 4 Marwyn Evo and they pass to you, and as you can go ahead and take your time to do things, and then Themis Decree away their board so they don't get the Marwyn to swing into you after that. That could possibly be another reason they're playing the Themis Decree. But yeah, solid deck overall. Same Evo lineup that we were doing in the Grand Showdown. I wouldn't change anything here. Really like this build. It looks very, very clean. Personally, like I said, though, I think I would remove the focus and just play something else in that spot. But I think the idea of focus in general is just pretty solid for the deck all around anyway. Third place, we got Shadow's Abyss deck here. It's just a control Abyss. There's not a lot to really talk about here. We got the new IMAX cards here. The 2-drop that can kill a 3-cost or lower and then buries a card for you. Solid card overall, and it help you, possibly high roll a Mill of Israfil into your graveyard or something like that. And then we have the new addition of Ronko. Ronko is a relatively really strong card because it can essentially 3-for-1 your opponent if they have wide boards. And if you've been playing this version of the deck for quite a while before Ronko was added, one of the biggest weaknesses is wide boards. Before, your only real answer was Israfil. Early play Israfil to get rid of someone going too quickly. Otherwise, the other one is Marzensky. If you happen to get 10 Necrocharge quick enough, you can get to like 3-for-1 that way. Otherwise, there's a lot of 3-for-1s in this deck now because we have 2 Ronkos and 3 Marzenskis, and the fact that in the later stages of the game, Yuzuki, I believe their name is, she also 2-for-1s people easily while also keeping a body on the board. A lot of stuff here. Obviously, too, another addition is Kawi. It being a really strong ward, probably not that great into the rune matchups, but into every other aggro deck or mid-range deck, this card is going to be a really, really powerful card because not only is it going to heal you back up in the aggro matchups, but it's also going to answer any big threats or at least answer something at some point or make your opponent trade inefficiently. Like the deck list, looks pretty clean. Let's take a look at the Evo deck itself. 3 Omen of Silence. That's a little bit surprising, but I also understand because like having a copy of every time you draw into Omen of Silence, you basically want to Evo it every time. Extra chances to also discard your opponent. I think that makes sense overall because they are opting also not to play like Bellringers. Did they have the Bellringers? They do have the Bellringers. It's just opted not to play the Bellringer Evo to be able to fit that in essentially. Everything else looks solid overall. Double Israfil. Only 2 Gensetsus, which I think is fine because I think they're still on 3 Gensetsus, still such a powerful card. But I think dang. Now I'm trying to think. In my list, am I still on 3 consensus? I'd have to double check it. I don't remember off the top of my head. But generally, most games, unless you're playing like a good control mirror, it does feel like by the second Gensetsu, the game's kind of over in that sense. So it doesn't feel as needed, especially when you start looping Israfils out. Finally, 4th place, we got another Control Abyss deck here from Nova TCG. So congratulations to you, Brian, if you happen to watch. Very solid list all around. It's kind of similar to the same list before. Differences here is they have the one gravy guy here, I like to call him. He's a really good way to close games out and also answer the board, which is really powerful. Other than that, we also have the Apostle of Silence. This is another card I really like. I like when some lists play it, some lists don't. I think the lists that do play it feel pretty strong overall, just because, you know, you got to pressure your opponent a lot if you get the high roll of them discarding a lot, or especially into these aggro matchups where you get a discard here or there. They're going to be playing a lot of cards out consistently, so their hand size is going to be very, very minimal, which means this Apostle of Silence is going to be able to actually close out games for you and live multiple turns, most likely, to deal that extra damage and really push to close games that way. Obviously, triple Gensetsu here, double Yuzuki, and then triple Death's Breath. Another addition here, Alcard, another really great option and tech card people tend to play here or there, depending how they like to play the deck. Not only does it help you push for game when it gets to that state, and you can obviously bring it back out easily with Death's Breath if it does get milled away or you discard it or so forth. The big thing is that a lot of times it helps you answer the board while also healing yourself against these aggro matchups, so it feels very, very good. Like, extra healing in this deck always feels really strong, especially when you start looping Israfils. If you've played Control Abyss, going back-to-back Israfils when you get so low to get to the state, to that late in the game, being able to loop Israfil just feels so great. Once you get like 4, 8, or 12 health healing going, that's when it feels insane, in my opinion. And then the Evo deck itself, pretty standard Evo deck. The only surprising thing here actually is the fact that we have only 1 Israfil Evo. A lot of times, almost every Israfil, if I could, I want to play 3 of it, just because it's so common. Like, once you get one out, you're gonna be able to bring it back over and over again to draw into another one easily. I usually like minimum, evoing it twice in a game, and sometimes I wish I could play the 3rd one, but then I feel like that's a little too greedy because I'd have to cut somewhere. Obviously, opting to play 2 of the Apostle of Silence here. I believe that they, I assume Nova TCG was more worried about the game states into the aggro decks being really, really strong. That this card, like, you want to be able to evo them when you can and anytime you can. And then another deck I think would make sense also. I haven't run this into Kuon, but I think the Possible Silence into the game states of Kuon, where you catch them with a low hand size because they didn't get their Trail of Lights early or anything like that, and you're able to get a couple early discards, causing an issue with their hand, and eventually they get down to a very small hand size. Meaning the fact that maybe more often than not, Apostle of Silence might be helping close out the games against Kuon as well. I haven't tested that myself, but I think that would make a little bit of sense there for like that idea of the game plan. So obviously Apostle of Silence being a really strong reason to be closing out games, or at least making games quickly over once it comes out. I probably prioritize having the 2 of Evo instead. And then, yeah. But that's it for JoJo. I think these results are relatively what I expected. I'm surprised we got to see a double Control Abyss in the top 4. This event, though, did cut to top 16, which is our first top 16 cut for, I think, BCS this season, which is nice to hear. That means we're getting a lot of players into these events. But also, maybe that really impacted exactly what happened here. I don't know these players here. I don't know if they... what their tiebreakers were, because maybe all these people were actually X2 people in top 16 and only got in because of top 16, and maybe once you get into the top 16, Control Abyss can have a higher chance of just like high rolling just a couple games to close out the tournament. I'm not really sure, because like I said before, even though I think Control Abyss is a really strong deck, I do think there are some weird consistency issues that I personally don't feel really confident going into like an 8-round event or more. That feels kind of scary to me. But obviously these players had no fear, so they were able to get through that day. Also, I guess maybe it's a little bit better too if like we're going into so many expected aggro matchups. yeah, I don't know. Control Abyss is just one of those decks that I feels like always has a chance to win the game. Just sometimes you gotta hit the right card to discard, essentially. But yeah, that's it. Next event should be Texas and Houston coming up. I will be there, so if you see me, say hi and so forth. I always like meeting people who see, watch the content, which is, I don't know why people watch this, but always appreciate that, because without you guys, I'd probably give up on this channel. Maybe I would. I'd probably still make content here and there, but not put as much time to it, I guess. But either way, I'm really appreciative of the people who, come say hi and everything like that. I love meeting all of you. But yeah, I should be there. I'm expecting a relatively same, split here for deck distribution. Maybe Haven will be a little bit higher. I think Houston is one of those places where for some reason, I meet a lot of Havencraft players there when I went the last few times. So maybe Havencraft will have a little bump in representation. But I think this breakdown here is going to be relatively similar. We're going to see very similar breakdowns for that, and probably very similar decks. I think we'll definitely see more IMAS, cool aggro making top 4 in Houston, I hope. And then I think Kuan as well. They're just going to both have really strong showings. It'd be interesting to see if Havencraft can do another showing like this, because second place with Havencraft is pretty solid all around. I wouldn't be surprised too if the cutting to top 16 helped this deck clear, but also if they got the really good Swiss rounds of hitting a lot of aggro matchups where control is just supreme. That's always really good too. Haven being I feel like Haven is just always like that rogue pick of every meta. I feel like it always has the opportunity to win games and slept on a little bit. But yeah, either way, hope to see you guys in Texas there. I'm going to try to bring my camera this time so I can do some vlogging and stuff there and take pictures of the area and stuff for people who can't actually make it out to these events, so they can see other things going on than whatever is shared by Bushiroad. But yeah, other than that, guys, I hope to see you guys in the next video. Later.